If you're looking for some unique and original music that doesn't cave to a genre, follow us at Replicant Band. Link is in the description. So I recently bought and played through id Software's new game, Doom Eternal. And the one question I kept asking is how? How does it look this good and load this fast? How does it play this well? How is this so badass? Literally walking. How are they making me care about the story? But the main one that kept playing on my mind, how is this game so good? However, these questions became somewhat void as I started looking into the reviews and general consensus towards the game. It seems that a lot of Doom fans have actually turned on Doom Eternal, not explaining how it's bad in detail, but in most cases just trying to state how Doom 2016 did it better. Now don't get me wrong, Doom 2016 was legitimately amazing. However, I feel like Doom Eternal has just stepped up in so many aspects, as well as taking the game in such a different direction that I think just added what was necessary and made everything an improvement over Doom 2016. For the purpose of this video, I'll be giving a point to either game after touching on a certain area. I think this fan review is a good way to start, so I can give a lot of thoughts on the game overall. This is a downgrade in every aspect possible. Level design is way worse, survival aspect of the game through glory killing to get ammo is annoying as fuck, it really slows down the pace of the game. A lot of reused assets, even in the soundtrack. You'll recognise 2016 Doom only in the end 2 to 3 levels when you have all the upgrades. Story is a nice addition, but not in this way. Okay, so let's start with level design is way worse. In what way? These new Doom Eternal levels are broad and breathtaking to experience. I think the way levels are set out during the game is great, especially compared to Doom 2016, where I found myself getting tired of the rip and tear action from time to time. In Eternal, I was surprised to find that platforming, climbing, leaping and dashing is actually quite a pivotal component of the game, and I'm glad to say they executed it really well. There was a huge potential here to fuck up the platforming, with clunky controls and bad placement, but it all just works really well. Hate to be a fucking Batman reviewer here, but you feel the weight of Doom Guy as he grips onto the side of a wall and drags himself up. But to sum up, I in fact think the level design is actually an improvement over Doom 2016 due to the sheer amount of different ways you can tackle a situation in a level, as well as the new additions like I mentioned before such as dashing and wall climbing, which in some ways are set up in order to let you take a breather, as well as just letting you explore the level from a different perspective. Point goes to Doom Eternal. Survival aspect ruins the game through glory killing to get ammo, slows down the pace of the game. I completely disagree with this, as not only is this good in making you switch up how you play to make combat scenarios infinitely more engaging, but also I think it actually speeds up the pace of the game, as you are constantly dashing around, blood punching and chainsawing in an attempt to get more ammo. Now I understand why this wouldn't be enjoyable from a personal point of view, as in some people's eyes this harder difficulty and mad dash to get supplies may make Doom Guy seem less badass. This really isn't a factor for me at all, as literally everything you do in this game makes you feel badass. Even just walking at parts makes you feel cool as fuck. Not to mention that glory killing to get ammo was already in Doom 2016. It's just that in that game, you had plenty more ammo. It's obvious why the developers chose to do this. As I mentioned before, it makes combat scenarios more engaging, but also will make you switch between different weapons more frequently, involving you more in the combat. They wanted you to experiment with different weapons in your arsenal. As in Doom 2016, I did find myself a lot of the time sticking with a certain weapon, simply due to having a massive surplus of ammo. In both games, this isn't really an issue for me, so complaining about it is just a bit strange. I'm not going to give a point because this is partly to do with gameplay, which I'll touch on later. A lot of reused assets, even in the soundtrack. I honestly don't know what you expect from the devs here. Yes, they reuse some assets, but it's literally a sequel to their own game. They are reusing their own assets in a game of the same series. Is that really something you can complain about? Do you want them to create a new engine every time they make a new game? All the new assets and textures that have been added to the game all look phenomenal, making Doom Eternal one of the best looking games I've ever played. For the graphics, the point has to go to Doom Eternal. And they aren't reusing the soundtrack, it's a completely new one created by Mick Gordon, yet again. In fact, I actually prefer the more metal and industrial sounds from 2016 compared with Eternals, which is oftentimes much more electronic and ambient. Both are great though, I just personally prefer the more metal sounds. For the soundtrack, the point goes to Doom 2016. Story is a nice addition, but not in this way. In what way? There are multiple ways the story is told. One of them I actually really enjoyed, and the other I didn't care for at all. Right, let's go into the story now. In Doom Eternal, you yet again play as the Doom Guy, ripping and tearing his way through demons in another attempt to save humanity. Whereas a lot of Doom 2016 was set in the Ark facility, as well as trips to Hell, Doom Eternal expands on this and sends you to a large variety of different locations, like a destroyed, demon-riddled Earth, Mars, and other different planets and space bases. The story is set 8 months after the first game, which personally I thought was quite disappointing, as at the end of the first game they left it off on a cliffhanger.
Rerouting tether coordinates complete.
Our time is up. I can't kill you, but I won't have you standing in our way. Until we see each other again.
But they seemingly dropped that in this game, instead opting to go in a different direction entirely. You now live inside a fortress in space, literally called the Fortress of Doom. And whereas in the last game where you were on a continuous journey throughout the facility, literally to hell and back, in this game you go from mission to mission through a teleporter. I really dislike this decision of having the hub area be where you go to missions. It works and it's convenient, but it doesn't really feel as realised as the journey through Doom 2016. I compare it to the From Software Souls, Born and Sekiro games, where after Dark Souls 1 they pretty much dropped the interconnected world idea entirely. It's a shame, but doesn't really affect anything that much. Earth has been overrun by demons, and as the Doomslayer, you head around the galaxy attempting to stop the demons forever. During this time, you are given 2 ways in which the actual bulk of the story is presented. It's conveyed through cutscenes and dialogue in-game that I personally enjoyed and was actively engaged in. However, it's also presented in these collectibles scattered throughout each map that for me personally were insanely boring to read, leading to me only reading about 1 or 2 that I actually picked up. This is such a poor and lazy way of giving lore and story. When promoting the game, id Software encouraged the attitude the fans gave to Doom 2016 and how they handled the story in that one. So it's weird that they've got these random pieces of paper strewn around the map in random places, potentially giving vital lore and details to enrich the world, but I just can't be bothered. I bought Doom Eternal to rip and tear, not to read fucking Pride and Prejudice. Look at how many fucking chapters is here! What the So going back to the review, yes, the story is a nice addition when the cutscenes are playing, and no, it's definitely not when it's in the collectibles. All things considered, I actually prefer the way Doom 2016 handled its story, as there was one, but you genuinely had to be paying attention to get it. You could skip over everything and be none the wiser, in some ways similar to the original Half-Life. This was also partly to do with the fact that there was rarely cutscenes in it. So, although I enjoyed Eternal's story, and especially enjoyed the badass cutscenes and actual backstory given to the Doom Guy for the first time, I could have done without it, which is not something I should be saying about the story included in any game. Add to that the annoying index collectibles, and Doom 2016 gets another point. So, now we've touched on all those aspects, let's go over the ones that weren't mentioned in that, let's be honest, poor review. Before we do that though, I just want to say that if you're enjoying the video, a like and a subscribe would be much appreciated, and really helps motivate me in creating new videos for you guys to enjoy. Firstly, I want to touch on the sound design, which I guess is more of a personal preference. PC Gaming Videos made a great video comparing the different sounds between the weapons in both games, so just take a listen to this real quick. As you might be able to tell, the sounds in Doom Eternal pack a whole lot more of a punch, one of the standouts being the rocket launcher. Whereas in Doom 2016 it just sounded kind of flat, in Eternal you can really feel the effect of letting off that rocket blast. I know this is only comparing the weapons, but I guess you've just got to take my word for it. Whenever they aren't reusing certain sounds from Doom 2016, Eternal brings the raw intensity of Doom's sound design levels above its predecessor. Point goes to Doom Eternal. Now it's time to touch on the most important aspect of any Doom game, the gameplay. The flow of gameplay in both games is just phenomenal, and everything in Eternal has been cranked up to 11, which was a near impossible task coming off Doom 2016, which was already seen as ridiculously fast-paced and intense. With new elements being added such as the dash move, everything just flows much better, even to the point where I go back to Doom 2016 and it feels sluggish in comparison. They made Doom 2016 feel sluggish. This new dash feature is used essentially as a dodge move from incoming projectiles and approaching enemies, but it's also used in the platforming segments I mentioned previously in order to traverse larger distances. The double jump is brought back from Doom 2016, but instead of being given to us halfway through the game like the former, in Eternal we start with it, letting us experience a good amount of verticality when going through all the levels. Combining these two make you feel 10 times more in control of your actions, and opens up a whole new range of possibilities on how to tackle a room filled with enemies. Along with this, they've also added some new interactive environmental objects, such as the climbing mentioned previously, and these monkey bar type things that you can swing off. These bars are used in platforming sequences, but also are often placed in combat scenarios to add yet another way of how you're approaching a fight. All these things add up to not only make the flow of gameplay more fast and intense, but also more engaging, really sucking you into these fights as you dash and dive across the battlefield, literally ripping the flesh from your enemies. In Eternal, I think there was a slight rebalancing made to how the enemies are affected by your damage. I think they may have given all the enemies a larger health pool in order to promote this idea of your guns running out of ammo leading to more experimentation with weapons. This may give off the impression of bullet sponge enemies, however this is far from the truth, as tackling every enemy in this game feels infinitely more satisfying than Doom 2016 for one big reason, and that is the new gore system that has been introduced. Now in Eternal, when you shoot your enemies, you literally see the flesh fly off of them and fall to the ground. Different parts of the body and bones get revealed as you pump your ammo into the demons, which, true to the motto, really feels like you are tearing these demons to shreds. Actually seeing the amount of damage you are causing to a demon pretty much removes any bullet sponge thought entirely. You also have some new equipment that is now rigged to your shoulder and arms. These are the new flamethrower and ice grenade gadgets which are mounted on your left shoulder, as well as the ridiculously cool new blade which is mounted to your left arm. The flamethrower is used in order to get lots of armor shards from enemies, and the ice grenade freezes the enemies, possibly giving you time to either have a breather or to stop certain enemies in order to lay a lot more damage into them. Both of these work on a cooldown timer, but it's so short that you rarely find yourself waiting for them to reload. Later in the game, you're also given this ridiculously cool looking sword, which kills any enemy in one hit, including the toughest enemies in the game, such as the Barons of Hell and the Cyber Demons. The aforementioned blade is used solely for the new glory kills, which is another thing that's just been cranked up to 11. In these glory kills, I'm seeing some of the most brutal shit that's ever been shown to me in a game, but it's also quite comical at times, and never gets anywhere near the level of being discomforting. However, whereas in the last game, 1 or 2 hits to a possessed scientist or an imp will trigger the glory kill, in Eternal they've essentially completely removed any damage from your melee attack, which admittedly is a weird decision, as it makes the Doom guy look like a fucking weakling. It's not a big deal though, and it's obvious why they took it out, again leading back into how they wanted you to focus on your weapons arsenal only. In some cases, to activate these glory kills, you can now hit certain specific weak points to either weaken or completely destroy an enemy. In a lot of ways, this makes combat much more strategic, making you deal with certain enemies first and leaving others for later. Finally, I just want to mention how they removed the gore nests from Doom 2016 pretty much entirely, and I think this is a great choice. This gave the devs more room in making the level's enemy encounters much more dynamic. The gore nests are still seen in Eternal, but in the form of optional challenges that can be completed to earn certain rewards, whether that be a tick for a checkbox or a key to unlock a secret weapon. So to wrap up the gameplay, it essentially takes everything from Doom 2016 and expands and refines it to the point where it is one of my personal favourite FPS games of all time. If you can't tell already, point goes to Doom Eternal. For the most part in Eternal, they reused the weapons that were introduced in Doom 2016, however with visual upgrades and some brand new mods for certain weapons. I like the way they went back to the original weapon designs from earlier Doom games and brought them into Eternal. It makes several weapons such as the rocket launcher and plasma gun look much more in line with the previous games, and in my opinion much more aesthetically pleasing than the somewhat generic designs seen in Doom 2016. As I mentioned in the sound design segment, I think the guns in Eternal pack a whole lot more of a punch when it comes to actually firing them. They also introduce a new special weapon known as the Unmaker, which has to be unlocked through the Slayer portals. Finally, the mods on the guns stay the same for the most part, outside of some great new additions which have been added to certain weapons. My personal favourites being the sticky bombs for the shotgun and the enhanced precision bolt for the assault rifle. Point here goes to Doom Eternal. The world and atmosphere that is presented in Eternal is off the charts cool as fuck. Like, just look for yourselves. They scale everything up and let you experience these huge, seemingly never-ending vistas on either these strange unknown planets or in space. This gives every environment a whole lot more uniqueness, and is memorable as a result. The breathtaking vistas paired with the ridiculously good graphics gets Eternal the point for me. I'm put in a tricky position when trying to decide which game does boss fights better, as personally I think Doom Eternal overall has a much higher quality of boss encounters. However, I still think the Cyber Demon in 2016 is the most insanely cool boss fight in a game, like ever for me. In Eternal, you come up against several boss demons, first of which is the Doom Hunter, which is covered by a protective shield and uses projectiles on you. It keeps its distance, but you can destroy it by either weakening the shields and getting damage in when you can, or you can disable the shield entirely by destroying the bottom half of the Hunter, leaving it completely exposed. It's not that tricky, but I think as a boss fight it works, and is quite satisfying to beat for the first time, especially where you beat one and then have to come up against two more instantly after. The next boss is the Marauder, which I thought was a brilliant concept, as it was actually an enemy type I was hoping for in Eternal. However, the execution of this enemy is so poor. It's probably my least favourite enemy in both of the two games. With the Marauder, you have to time your attacks in order to catch him off guard and counter-attack. In order to do this, as the game says, you literally have to just be mid-range. Not too close and not too far. However, whenever I fight him, the guy waits about for ages, making me just have to stand in one place, potentially getting hit by other enemies. And even when I think I'm mid-range, he either does a close or ranged attack. No matter what I do, I can't figure out this enemy. And I think this is less of a get good thing and more of just a badly designed enemy who's too inconsistent. Unfortunately, like the Doom Hunter, the Marauder shows up several times after its initial boss fight, making his annoying appearances constantly throughout the game. There is also a Gladiator boss fight. The first phase is like the Marauder, as you have to counter-attack, and for the most part it's quite boring. However, the second phase, he ditches his shield and goes into a full frenzy mode, leaping and smashing you down any chance he gets. This phase is great and actually reminded me a lot of the Cyber Demon boss from 2016. Then there's the Khan Maker, which I thought was good at the time and is definitely a spectacle, but all things considered, it's quite a dull boss fight as well. All you have to do is lower the shields, which is really easy with a couple rocket blasts, and then use your shotgun's hook shot to get close and lay a blood punch down. Do this a few more times and you've won. A brilliant spectacle, but not a very good boss fight. Finally, there's the Icon of Sin, which is rivaled with the Cyber Demon for my personal favourite Doom boss fight. To defeat the Icon of Sin, you have to first destroy its first layer of armour, whilst also dealing with the constant amount of spawning enemies. It may sound tedious, but it's balanced enough where you get the perfect balance of feeling in control and overwhelmed at the same time. Once you destroy the first set of armour, its flesh is exposed, as you are teleported to another area. You now have to destroy each body part for a second time, and once you've done that, you've won. The visuals and arena of this final boss encounter is just amazing, and I doubt any game will end up topping this amount of chaos anytime soon. So, although Doom 2016 has my personal favourite boss fight in, I think overall Doom Eternal delivers a larger amount of better boss fights, however is also bogged down by some absolute stinkers. Point goes to Doom Eternal. This is an aspect that properly got on my nerves in Doom Eternal, because for the most part I thought most of these, whether they were runes, suit upgrades or mod upgrades, were just useless and a waste of time. When you want to upgrade anything, you first have to pause the game, which is already a bad start, but then you have to look through this jumbled screen of mess, with effects so minor that they may as well just not be there. I didn't like this in Doom 2016 either, so the fact that they expanded this in Eternal, making everything a whole lot more convoluted and annoying, means the point here is going to Doom 2016. Finally, I just wanted to touch on the multiplayer component, and Oh, well, when the battle mode did actually have more than 2 players, it consisted of one Doomslayer going up against 2 demons. The concept is simple, whoever kills who first wins. However, this one battle mode in a lot of ways feels like a massive step back from Doom 2016's multiplayer, which included a variety of different modes. However, with this multiplayer mode, you can now customize your Doomslayer as well as several demons, although I have felt rather limited in the options I can choose from. However, this could just come from me not playing enough, but as you can see, I don't really have a choice. And to be honest, I much preferred the progression and the customization in Doom 2016 anyway, so as you can probably tell, the point goes to Doom 2016. So at the end of that, Doom Eternal has 7 points and Doom 2016 has 4 points, meaning Eternal wins by a landslide. And I mean, as I stated at the start, I believe that Eternal was pretty much a step up in every way, with only minor hitches holding it back from being one of my top 10 favourite games of all time. This video took a really long time to make, so a like and a subscribe would be much appreciated. And if you guys want to see more content like this from me in the future, then let me know in the comment section below. Anyways, hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.